So we're going to review the key strategies, then we'll have a moment to reflect. And then after we review the key strategies, we'll review the key competencies. How does that sound to everybody? Okay. And just to give you a little bit of my background, yes, Dr. Shakir read my bio, but I used to teach the social studies methods class at Florida A&M University. And so I spent a lot of time kind of trying to understand the test for students because I really wanted students to pass on the first time because it's expensive. All right, so you all know this information. It's approximately 110 multiple choice questions. You have 2.5 hours to complete the test, and then it's multiple choice, and you want to choose the best response of the available options. And I have a PDF of this PowerPoint, so you will receive that if you haven't already. Okay. All right. So in order to feel prepared for the test, I want you all to plan to spend several weeks preparing. Do you already have your test scheduled? No. Okay, good. So we really want you to create a schedule for yourself ahead of time because we want you to break down the competencies and the test topics into different weeks. This way, you know that you have enough time to study your test topics week by week. Okay? And so here are some things that test takers wish they would have known before taking the test. And I'm just going to read these things over. So the first thing is, oh, well, let's back up. How do you all feel about chunking it week by week before you take the test? So competencies 1 through 2 or 1 through 3 for 1 week, then the next set of competencies. Have you thought about studying for the test in that way? Go ahead, Paris.
I've been using Miss Janelle at the CEC Center, and that's how she's been helping me structure it. Is that we've been chunking, so we have our hour session, and if we finish section one, then we'll do section two. But she won't go on until I have like a full understanding of what we've already completed.
Excellent. How about you, Derek or Ashley?
That's how I was also using Maddie. I don't know if you know, well, the tutoring session. So she would chunk it too. We would do week by week. Every day that we would meet, we'll do a different session. Well, different for what's it called? um different well, what is it? The test structure. So
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So you want to watch for questions that include the words not or except, because that's going to indicate that you need to choose the answer um, choice that does not apply. Okay. So pay specific attention to the wording. Another thing is you want to keep an eye on your time to make sure you're able to complete the test in the allotted 2.5 hours. I got a lot of comments from students in the past. I just couldn't finish. You want to pace yourself because you want to answer every question. Even if you don't know the answer to every question, it's better to give an educated guess to complete the test than to leave your questions blank. Okay? All right. So the first thing is we want to read questions featured on the exam as carefully as possible. Back in the day, you could take notepads into the test room with you. Are you still able to do that? Taking your notes? Perfect. So make sure you have your pad, you break down the question. You might need to kind of write some notes in the margin to kind of think through exactly what they are asking you. Each question is framed so that you will receive the important information from them so that it will help you find the answer. Okay, so a lot of times the answer is already in the question. Keep the context of the question as well as your choices. So, meaning kind of think through it's hard to do this, but it's so important to do this. Which competency does this relate to? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And then you want to spend some time thinking about you recognizing exactly what's being asked of you. And then you want to use the process of elimination, especially thinking through the obvious incorrect answers. Okay. All right. So you're going to see, have you all talked about the difference in the types of questions that this test has? Okay, some of you have, some of you haven't. All right. So you're going to have 3 different types of questions on this test. First is, and they all come in any order, right? So you might have a series of direct questions, but you could have a series of sentence completion questions. They're going to pick, some of them could be mixed in. in between. So your direct questions are you choose the response option that best answers the question. Your sentence completion is exactly self explanatory, right? So you're going to complete the sentence with some sort of definition or frame. Um, then your scenario is it's going to be a real life kind of case study or problem that you'll see in the classroom, or that you might have seen in the literature. So you want to answer the question, make the diagnosis, and then you're going to recommend a course of action by selecting the best response. Okay. And so something you we'll see some scenario examples later on, but you want to think through like what happens if a student needs differentiated instruction, right? Or what happens if a parent reaches out about some material. They're going to give you specific scenarios where you're going to have to break down to find the best response. These questions are especially tricky because depending upon how you read them and depending upon your experience in your student teaching, um, you could have multiple correct answers, but you have to choose the best answer. And that's what we're going to work on today is trying to discern how do I identify the best answer based on the literature as well as based on your understanding of the competencies. All right. So competencies 1 through 4. I highly recommend you have these memorized. Have you all memorized your competencies? I know, like who does that and why? The reason why I say spend some time memorizing these is because you don't want to play a guessing game about what is a competency. Okay. If I were you, I would jot these down on an index card and just flash through them every day. Because number one, when it's time for you to build out lesson plans in your profession, when it's time for you to kind of think through what students are learning, you're going to have to go back to these competencies anyway, because the whole field of education are built around these 8 competencies that I'm about to talk to you about. So memorize the competencies. That will take the guessing game out of what am I even being asked here? Because you'll be able to say, oh, that's competency number 1, knowledge of instructional design and planning. All right, so let's go through these, and then I'll read them, and then I'm going to ask you all to kind of break down your understanding of what this means, okay? So, knowledge of instructional design and understanding. And not, I'm sorry, knowledge of instructional design and planning. So, what comes to mind when you think of that?
Like lesson plans.
Good, excellent. What else now that we're in a COVID world?
Like instruction for like differentiating the instruction so that it's compatible online and in person.
Thank you. Excellent. When you see instructional design, I want you to think mode of delivery. I want you to think about lesson planning. I want you to think about accessibility, right? So, this is about how you're planning out your lessons. Knowledge of appropriate student centered learning environments. What comes to mind when you're thinking about this?
The design of the classroom,
The
or
design.
the accessibility of the classroom.
Absolutely. What else, folks?
Pretty much how you control the classroom. So walking around the classroom, proximity control, things like that.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. Knowledge of instructional delivery and facilitation through a comprehensive understanding of subject matter.
So that's like pretty much like how you teach the lesson.
How you teach the
Yeah.
lesson. Excellent. And what else with that? Pay special attention to this last part of the sentence. Oh, you're on mute, Paris. I'm sorry.
How you as the teacher understand the subject matter to make sure you're teaching it in a way that they can understand it.
Excellent. Well, this is what is sometimes challenging about the field of education, right? Not only do you have to know your pedagogical techniques, you also have to be your content area expert, right? And so when you're thinking about your social studies lesson, you're thinking about your math lesson, right? You have to have a comprehensive understanding of the um, information that you're planning to disseminate so that you can think through the appropriate instructional delivery and facilitation method. All right. Next, knowledge of various types of assessment strategies for determining impact on student learning.
I know this covers diagnostic tests, summative tests, formative, the different type of tests, criterion reference, norm reference.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Right? And so sometimes you'll have um, formal and informal assessment, right? And you're thinking through the ways in which, how are you going to measure what the students are getting out of the learning experience? Okay, any questions? No. Okay. So commit these to memory um, because you want to make sure you don't have to play the guessing game about what's really happening in terms of what you're being asked on this subject. I'm sorry, on this professional exam.
Got a question.
Go for it. Yes.
Do you recommend uh, remembering the whole thing, or should we like summarize it in our head? So 4 has to do with assessments and strategies.
Yeah, I like to memorize it as is, but if you just want to say, um, you know, assessment strategies, that's fine. I think whatever your mnemonic device is going to be, do that.
Gotcha.
But there's sometimes the wording is similar in the competencies, and so you want to make sure you get the distinct factor for each. All right. So competencies, and the professional has 8 competencies that it covers. All right. So the knowledge of relevant continuous professional improvement. What comes to mind when you read this?
How the teacher continues like their education, going to workshops and camps and things like that, like the effort that's put in to make sure you're staying relevant to teaching practices.
Absolutely. Right. What kind of professional development are you participating in? What type of continuing education units are you participating in order to really stay proficient in the field? All right. Knowledge of principles of professional conduct of the education profession in Florida.
So is that just like knowing the laws that comes with teaching?
Knowing the laws, knowing not just for the student's safety, but also from an HR perspective. This is the human resource question series of questions that you could receive. So, what is it on your end as a professional? What type of conduct do you need to adhere to? You all know, in Florida, you have level 1 back or level 2. I believe it's level 2 background checks. Is that correct? Yes. So you're fingerprinted before you can even, step foot and do field clinical placement. You got to get fingerprinted, you got to get your badge. And once they have that information, you're constantly being, your information is constantly being ran just to make sure that you are, you don't have DUIs, you don't have any kind of issues on your record that prevents you from being a safe educator in the classroom. So this is the human resource question or competency, I should say. Knowledge of research based practices appropriate for teaching English language learners. What comes to mind when you hear that?
Differentiated instructions for those with English language learners, like how are you going to accommodate your lessons so that they can comprehend what you're teaching if there's a language barrier.
Absolutely. And not just how you're going to teach, how you're going to assess as well, and then also how you're going to work with families. So, excellent. All right, the last competency, knowledge of effective literacy strategies that can be applied across the curriculum to impact student learning. What comes to mind?
I would say being able to incorporate literacy strategies in every field, whether it's physical education, art, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Yep. So you want to have things, effective literacy strategies, because we know if students are not able to effectively read on grade level, the other subject areas will become challenging to them. So we want to make sure that we identify these issues. We want to make sure that we understand effective literacy strategies so that they can read the word problems in a math class the same way they can read the sentences or paragraphs in a language arts class. All right. And we want to make sure that we are consistent with that information. Very good. All right, so you've got the key competencies. So I can't impress upon you enough. Read, 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 memorize, memorize, memorize. If you memorize the key competencies, when you see these questions, you'll be able to, it's like a matrix. You'll be able to match this question and say, oh, I know that is. That's knowledge of research based practices for ELLs. Like you'll be able to get it. And sometimes students miss this step. They just want to go in and study the questions, but you don't have a true understanding of the competencies. The questions will not make any sense. All right. So the next thing that I want to impress upon you all is to reflect on your coursework. So, how many people have taken their degree audit and gone through and looked at which course covers what? Uh-oh, it's slowly loading. Okay. So you want to pull this up, okay? And you want to think through, all right, I've taken this course, I've taken that course. You want to spend some time looking at your education courses to see where specifically you spent the most time on certain competencies. Okay? Have you all gone back and done that? All right, this is a game changer. If you can go back and identify which education course matches to the competency, you will have a whole semester full of notes to pull upon. So there are certain classes like, is it Dr. Blankenship? She teaches the ELL, right? You want to go back to her course and you want to pull those notes because that's the competency. Let me go back here. Let's go back to, if you think through these competencies, which class did you spend a great deal of time on, right? So, which class did you learn how to build your lesson plans? Which class did you talk about appropriate student centered learning? This one probably came in your diversity of teaching class, um, you know, your subject areas courses. There's a specific class you took on how to design your assessment instruments. So you want to go back to those classes, okay? Um, when you think about your continuous professional improvement, there are certain classes within the course curriculum or within the degree curriculum that really spent a lot of time. For number 8, you want to go back to your methods course, okay, to kind of think through all of those strategies. Now I'm going to stop right there and open it up for questions. Do you still have your notes? And do you still, or if you don't have your notes, do you have your syllabi?
That's my notes.
Okay. This will help you because the the beauty of the education program is that it all builds on everything. And then once you build that content in your brain, you'll be able to reflect on it to study. Okay, the next thing I want to make sure you all know is you have to make sure that you are mapping these competencies with the skills to the course that you're taking, which is what I was just noting there. You can do that through this PDF, and you can also assess your test readiness. Have you all seen this document? Okay, we got it. Y'all have to stay on this FTCE website. All right, so you have all of the test competencies now. And what you want to do is you want to jot your competency right up here, right? And then you want to think through which classes you took. Okay, when you do this kind of matrix, it will help you begin to understand what is happening. And within each competencies, you have certain skills within that competency. Okay, if I were you, I would take the step and build out this matrix. This probably would take you about 2 hours to do, but once you're done, you're done. Okay. So I would definitely use this as an exemplar, and then you can highlight, all right, I had this in this class, I had this in that class. All right. Let me go back so that, and then once you've done that, then you can download this to see if you're ready to test. All right. So it's an extra step, but I think it's worth it in terms of helping you really think through how much you need information you already know. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. What questions do you all have? None so far? Okay. So what gives you pause as you prepare for this test? Or what gives you, or when we think about test taking, we have challenges and we have opportunities. What would you say is a challenge, and how would you turn that into an opportunity for growth and reflection? So, what gives you pause, or what would you say is a challenge?
On the test for me,
Mhm.
I can I can always get rid of two answer choices, but when it comes to those last two, picking which one is right, that's where it always gets me.
Okay. Okay. So then, what that sounds like to me is that you've got to zero in on your definition of key concepts. Because when you have two test options that are very similar, you might need to spend a little bit more time in the literature so that you can really figure out the true definition, so that you'll be able to say, okay, I'm not going to get tripped up on these two because I know definitively it's this answer. But that comes from reading and developing index or flashcards. And to be quite honest, a lot of this is rote memorization. It is. And does everybody understand when I say rote memorization? All right. I'm taking it back old school. It's like what we teach our young children. All right. What about you, Paris or Ashley? What gives you pause? Or what is it a challenge that you're prepared to turn it into an opportunity?
I'll probably say that it's just a lot. I'm generally a good test taker. Like I don't panic, but I panic up until the test, I think, because
Okay.
it's just a lot of information. And I think the fact that it's memorization is difficult because like GK, you can study and that's a education. It's hard to explain, but this is pure memorization. I can't study it. I can't practice it as far as that goes. It's just I have to memorize what it is. And that's scary. It's a lot. And finding time to study all of the information.
Yes. And I probably should have led with that. Um, it's helpful to do a study schedule the same way that you write in, I got this class at this time, the same way we write in, I got to pick my child up from school. My alarm just went off reminding me to don't forget my child at school. And so, there are things that you have to just literally schedule. And studying for this test is one of those things. You have to schedule the study time, and it has to be consistent time. What about you, Ashley? What gives you pause?
Um, like Pearson said, like really trying to have the time to sit there and study and really understand the material. Because I didn't do too bad on the test, but I still didn't pass it. So, I mean, yeah, it's just having time to really sit there and study for it.
Okay. Okay. So another thing I wanted to just, reiterate is that you want to take this seriously and you also want to invest in yourself. It costs a lot of money to take the test, so you don't want to take it, you know, three, four, five, excuse me if anybody has taken it that many times, times. You really want to, give yourself two, three times really. Ideally, we'd like to see students pass on the first time. It's designed to pass on the first time. However, we know things happen. And like you just said, you didn't do too bad, but there are probably some sections you did better than others, right? So you really want to zero in on that. And then lastly is to pace yourself. Have you all heard of the Pomodoro method? All right, so let me introduce this to you all. All right, so it comes out, it's Pomodoro is just Italian, it's a timer, and it's just you set this timer, you chunk the material because we know that our brains cannot handle more information. Oops. Sorry. I don't know what happened. Okay, resume share. Here we go. We know that our brains can only handle a certain amount of context or content at a time, right? So think about your young children that you're about to teach in your classroom, right? So you want to identify your tasks for the day, okay? So I'm working on competencies 1 through 3, and that's it. Then you want to set your timer, okay? You're not going to do anything else. You're not going to answer email. You're not going to answer text. You're going to turn that phone off. You're going to tell the children, okay, here's your tablet. Occupy yourself for a few minutes because I got to get these 25 minutes in, okay? You're going to work for the duration of the timer. You're going to check your answers. You're going to take a 5-minute break, okay? This is how you build, okay? This is how you build the capacity for your brain to log in this content so you do not forget, okay? Um, it is a lot of material, and 2.5 hours can be daunting. So it's very important that you chunk this material. And then finally, you need to reward yourself. So after you've gotten through contents or competencies 1 through 3, do something. Go outside, take a walk, maybe give yourself a little piece of dark chocolate, get some ice cream, do something to reward yourself. Okay, I've narrowed this down and now I am ready to move on to the next set of competencies. My best advice that I can give you is do not study all over the place. Okay? Narrow down the competencies and the questions that go with the competencies, then move on to the next. All right? Because if you're going to be, you only want to kind of do your all over the place is when you're doing like your practice tests, because those things are randomized and shuffled. And so you can get any competency. But up until you're ready for the actual practice test, don't study all over the place. It's just going to confuse you. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So talk to me a little bit about how you've been studying, and then we'll pull up the Kahoot so that we can just have fun with practicing some of these questions. And I'll stop sharing while you all talk to me about how you've been studying.
Um, like I said, I was working with a tutor, so every day I would meet with her and we would study the different competencies. And then like whatever notes that I've taken from that, I would study that or memorize it to an extent. So that's how I've been studying.
How long, Ashley, have you been spending with that?
Um, Before like classes got hectic, I was doing like for a month before I took the test. So yeah, if that answered, yeah.
Okay. Ashley, I will say a month is not long enough. I hate to be like that. It's going to be more of like a a 2 to 3 month type of thing, if in an ideal world. And that's just because if you chunk it up and you're going to cover all 8 competencies, you want to be able to spend, competencies 1 through 3 for 1 month, 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8 the last month. You really want to kind of let that material seep in, and you want to have that um, confidence that you got it. So, because the month really, did it feel like a little bit of cramming to you?
Um, to like not really, but like to an extent.
Okay.
Because it's like I already knew, because like you said earlier in the presentation, like classes that you've taken that you already know. So it's just like for me, it was just getting a like a summary of everything. But now, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Paris, tell us how you've been studying.
Oh, I haven't been. I'm being 100%. I've had like a tutoring session, and I've gotten through competency 3, and I have my books. But I'm with Ashley. This semester has been insane, and there just came a time when I couldn't dedicate anything else, and so I feel like this was really helpful to help me set up for that because I am really nervous about taking it. So, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been studying, and I probably would have been like Ashley though, just like, well, I've had classes on it. I'm just gonna take it after maybe a month. So, um, or even probably less than that because I'm relatively impatient. So I haven't really studied at all.
Okay. Well, thank you for your honesty. I definitely appreciate that. I think, all of you all are strong students. I mean, the fact that you even signed up for this webinar to even get some test taking strategies and you're all preparing for student teaching and doing all that great work, you'll be fine. I just don't want to send you in there blindly. I want to make sure that you've had sufficient time to plan. What about you, Derek?
So before I took it the first time, I was studying on my own, probably for about a month. Took it, didn't do too well. So then I started working with a tutor, and the way we started studying, she looked at what I did the worst on, which competency I did the worst on. So we started working from there, and we've
Okay.
been doing it for a couple months. So
Okay, good. Yeah, that's really helpful. After you have taken the test and you have that feedback, it's definitely smart to work in your areas where you felt like you did not perform the best. But for someone going in who hadn't taken it at all, start from the beginning and break it up as I articulated in the presentation today. So I've dropped the link to the Kahoot in the chat. I just want us to have a little fun because we've only got about 12 minutes left. So I put some sample questions in there so we can see where we all are. So let me start the game. Now, if the questions are fast because I knew we were short for time. So you're only going to have about 5 seconds. And I can read them for you all. Which of the following assessment strategies involves the systemic collection of a student's work?
That was really fast.
Yeah, that was so fast.
Yeah.
But my answer would have been portfolio.
Okay, good deal. Next question. All right. So you got to move fast. All right. Which of the following is the best example of a teacher promoting a climate of openness and inquiry in the classroom? My question.
crazy fast.
Yeah, my timing may be too fast. But let's take a look at the answers. All right. So we got creating interest centers and interest groups in the classroom, establishing a variety levels of instruction in the learning environment, developing curriculum that is consistent with students' interests, or promoting student cultures that are studied, shared, and celebrated. All right. So this goes back to our competency that talks about um, different diversity of instructional methods. Okay. All right. Let's see. Hold on before we Let me see if I can change the settings, folks. Let me stop sharing and let me end this game and see if I can change the settings just to give you guys a little bit more time. Another thing too to think about is when you are looking at the questions and thinking through your answers, is you want to be able to articulate which competency does this connect with, okay? For those of you who've already taken it, I know that's an extra step, but did it occur to you to do that? Or were you able to identify which competencies connected to the questions? Derek or Ashley?
Do you mean for the Kahoot or when we actually took the exam?
No, when you actually took the exam.
For the most part, I did. Like I said, I didn't have them memorized word by word, but I kind of had an idea of which. So like when I got to the questions about ELLs, I was like, okay, I know which competency this is. It's competency 7 or whatever.
Okay, great. All right, I've got it reset. Let me share. So you'll have to log back in. Here's the new pin. Thank y'all. All righty, now let's start. Okay, so this will give you a little bit more time. And there are only 7 questions. Which of the following assessment strategies involves the systemic collection of students' work? All right. Good job, everybody. Which of the following is the best example of a teacher promoting a climate of openness and inquiry in the classroom? All right, great. All right, here's where it gets challenging because we haven't reviewed these questions. All right. A statement conveying students' present academic functional level should be placed with the students' technological needs. What document is this? Weekly report to the parent, quarterly report home, IEP. Very good. Excellent. All right. When a teacher asks students to make judgments based on certain criteria, the teacher is developing what? Inquiry-based skills, conflict resolution skills, expository skills, or higher order thinking skills? Higher order thinking skills. Very good. So was one person was just slow or were they thinking about the different answers?
I was thinking about the different answers.
Okay, which one were you kind of thinking on?
Inquiry-based learning skills and then higher order thinking.
Okay. And see, I think the way to think about that is that make judgments based on certain criteria the teacher is developing, right? Because an inquiry-based learning skill would be something more like a problem posing type of question. So you kind of just have to think through the word choice. All right. Okay. 2 more questions, y'all. Which accommodation for taking a multiple choice test would best serve a mid-level ELL student? So, allowing students extra time to complete the test. Okay. So, giving a student a translation of the test is not going to help a mid level ELL because mid level means they're developing, right? Permitting the student to work with another student, we typically don't do that. in terms of our test taking skills, or test taking accommodations. And then having a student answer the test questions orally. Now, that can be an option, it depends. Um, but when you're talking about a mid-level, this is your key word here is the mid-level. Somebody who can do a little bit of the reading, but with a little bit more time could really be successful with the test. So that will go back to what you learned in Dr. Blankenship's class. All right. All right, 2 more questions. When parents request copies of a software to use at home with their children, a teacher should consult. And this has to do with our policies in our schools. So I had some people who thought school technology plan, and then other people said site license guidelines. Good. So this one is tricky, but you always want to check, especially in our COVID world, you always want to check with the site license guidelines, just because we don't know if we can even disseminate the information, the software, outside of the school device. Okay. And so that goes really with our policies and procedures. All right, next question. This is the last one. A teacher instructs students to read a selection, then retell the information. The students are using the skill of summarizing, clarifying, synthesizing, or classifying. Excellent. So, teacher instructs students to read the selection, then retell the information. That is the key word there, the retelling. Retelling summarizes. If you ask them to make meaning or to give an understanding, that's synthesizing. Does that make sense to everybody? So these, I just wanted to pull these up and then we'll go. You can take a look. Good job, everybody. We're all winners in here. um, Way to go, Ashley. And we know, and we know that Kahoot also deals with how quickly you answer the question as well. But I just wanted to throw out just some samples just so that you can kind of think through exactly what you're up against as you are developing your study plan. So we've got about 6 minutes or so left. Do you all have any lasting questions for me? And are those questions familiar to you all? Have you seen kind of those kinds of questions before? I know, Paris, you haven't started studying yet, but for Ashley and Derek?
Yeah, for the most part, those were real familiar. So
Okay.
that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yes. Very good. What other questions? Let's open it up for questions. Any other tips I can give you or anything I didn't cover that you might have hoped I could cover? No? All right. So before we close, tell me one thing you're going to do to help you prepare for the test as you get ready to move forward. One thing you'll do differently.
I'm going to go back to the courses that I've taken and go through my notes and look over that stuff. And that's something that I didn't do before. So
Excellent. Thank you.
I plan on doing the same thing, just going to find like my old class notes and look at the assignments that we had. Also, take more time to study for this exam. That's another thing that I'm gonna do.
Great. Paris.
And then I'm going to spend a week on every competency. I wasn't doing that before. I was getting one CEC session and thinking I was done. So I'm going to spend a week on every competency.
Perfect. And that puts you at 8 weeks to prepare. And that's, you sign up for it and then okay, in 2 months I'm taking this test. I got to be committed to it. That's perfect. So when do you have it scheduled for Ashley and Derek?
See, since they gave out the free exams, so everybody's trying to catch up right now, trying to get those in. So you're not really available to take the exam until June. So that's when mine is in June.
Okay, wonderful. So if we look at the calendar, you've got roughly 6 weeks
Yeah, that first week of June.
Excellent. What about you, Derek?
I think I actually haven't scheduled it yet, but I keep on checking to see when dates come available. So I'm trying to at least schedule it for a month out since I have been studying. So
Perfect. Yes. I think anyone, if you just tell any of your friends that are getting ready to go into, test taking mode, just at least give yourself 4 weeks, because 4 weeks will allow you to at least spend 2 weeks on 2 competencies per week. Okay. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for your participation. I already know you all are going to pass. And I'm just delighted to see so many vibrant educators on this call who are committed to serving children. And, a lot of times people feel many kinds of ways about the test, but, we are practitioners, right, as teachers. So we're like the doctors, the dentists, and orthopedic surgeons. We have to stay on top of our game with our content knowledge, pass our tests, our boards, so that we can go out and serve the community as best we can. So you all are really doing amazing work, and thank you for choosing teaching as the profession. And if you need anything, I am here for you always to support you and encourage you. So Dr. Shakir has my information. This PowerPoint is available, as well as the Kahoot if you want to just have a little fun. Do brain breaks, y'all, to make this fun. All right. So that you really get through it. And thank you for your time. It's really been an honor to be with you all today.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.